Hello and welcome to the Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. YouTube page. We have with us Joshua Daines.
Hi.
Would you mind introducing yourself to everybody here?
So my name's Joshua Daines. What do you want from an introduction?
Well,
I'm
you're
sorry.
part of Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc., right?
Yes.
So, what do you do for that company?
Okay, so for Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc., I am the vice president of operations. So I handle things like site security, making sure we have vendors, making sure we have the right kind of facilities for safety. All of that is under my purview. So as operations, I also am kind of the lead on taking on entertainers. So paid performers, people like that, typically go through me as well. So
That doesn't sound like a super fun job. What got you into doing that? I mean, that sounds like some pretty serious things.
it's serious stuff. What got me into it, it was when my wife Kathleen, she is the president, and she started taking over, and when that happened, we had a very, very small board, and it was just somebody's got to do it. And so I kind of picked up that torch. It's actually become kind of a fun thing for me. It's very fun to, I mean, there's headaches, of course, but it's fun to talk to people, to interface, to reach out to new vendors, to invite people in, to, all of that. Entertainers are always interesting when we get the new entertainers. We get a lot of new ones that are like, hey, I don't even know if I'm appropriate for your event, and it's fun to talk them through all of that stuff. So
You
Yeah.
made it kind of sound like, though, when you first started, that it may not have been quite as enjoyable as it is now. What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced when you were starting your position?
So I think the biggest hurdle we faced when we first started was with some of the things that were going on with Emmett. There were some complications, and it ended up that very first year that we were kind of in charge of everything, we had 5 vendors, and no one wanted to be a vendor with us. And so moving to CUNA, things changed a little bit there, and that opened up some avenues. But just trying to reach out and to find vendors was very difficult. We spent the first couple of years just going to all the local farmers markets and the different events that they have around, in the valley here, and trying to network and build something from basically nothing. It's probably the biggest hurdle out of all. Was just we had a customer base that was pretty much nil, and trying to get that up was rather important. So.
When was the very first event you tried to put on? What year was that?
So the first event that we tried to put on was 2017, and that had to get canceled because we just didn't have enough. The first one we did put on was 2018, and that was in CUNA.
Okay, how many vendors did you have for CUNA compared to Emmett?
So that first year in CUNA, we had about 36 vendors.
So you went from 5 vendors in 2017 to 36. So what tactic did you use to encourage that kind of a growth? Because, I mean, that's a lot better than 5. What was the main drive, and what did you have to do to find that kind of success?
It was just a lot of, to use an older term, hitting the pavement. We went to a lot of different events. We went to the Highland Games. We went to the Goddess Fest that happened back when it was in Ann Morrison. We went to all kinds of different venues and places where people were putting on these craft fairs or things. And it was just, I mean, I think I probably reached out to over 200 people that year, and we only had 36 come. But after that first year, people started looking at, hey, this is actually a good thing, and word of mouth started getting around. And so it's just grown from there.
Now, you threw out the name Ann Morrison. What city is Ann Morrison located in?
That's in Boise.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the majority of your fair experience, would that be as far as working with Idaho Renaissance Faire? Has it been in the Boise area then?
The majority of my of working with Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. was yes, that's been primarily in the Boise area. Um, yeah.
Have you ever had thoughts of maybe relocating to another area, or has this place always been where you've decided this is where it needs to be?
So there's been thoughts here and there, but really the Boise area is for Idaho. Boise's the capital of Idaho, and so it has the most growth in Idaho. It has the most population growth. The most people are coming in to the Boise area, and it just whenever I've thought about, well, maybe we should move it to somewhere else in Idaho. It's always just kind of been a doesn't feel right. We need to stay within the distance of Boise for not just for the population of Boise itself, but I mean, we've got the airport here, and we actually do get people from out of town who come in to visit.
What's the farthest someone has traveled to be at one of your events?
Farthest someone has traveled to be at one of our events. Without mentioning any names, we had a rather famous actor, and I believe he's from New Zealand, but he just visited us this last event we did.
That's quite a distance.
Is
it because of how everything's been organized, do you think, or was it just luck?
I think in his particular instance, it was luck. But that's the farthest anyone's come to our events. As far as people specifically coming, we've had people from Colorado. We've had people from Texas. We've got entertainers who come here from Texas and entertainers who come here from Chicago.
Okay, so it's not just an Idaho event.
No, we bring in people from all over.
Okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at some of Josh's history. Okay, what was your very first Renaissance Fair that you ever attended just as a patron? And then kind of your history up until the Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. What started this?
Okay. I don't know what to consider my first, because the very first Renaissance-esque experience I ever had was in Cub Scouts. We had a jamboree that we went to, and it was all Renaissance nights and things like that. It was a fun time. But that was, I was a Cub Scout. The first Renaissance Fair that was an actual Renaissance Fair that I attended would have been in 2009 in Cedar City. Cedar City, Utah puts on, over the summer they put on their Shakespeare Festival down there, and one of the weekends that they have the Shakespeare Festival, they do a rather, it's small, but it's well-known Renaissance Fair. And so that was my first actual experience going to a Renaissance Fair as a patron. And we kind of went every chance we got while we were down in Cedar City, we went to the Renaissance Fair. And then when we moved back up here to Boise, we were lost for a couple of years. We didn't have any Renaissance fairs. And then we started up a business selling outfits and costume accessories and things like that. And we vended with Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. Up in Emmett. And that while we were there, we met up with an entertainment group that went by the name of Sawtooth Renaissance Players. They, as a group, are no longer a thing. That group no longer exists. But we worked with them for a few years. They put on the Treasure Valley Renaissance Fair that was over in Caldwell for a couple of years. And while working with that group, we got to know Dawn Russell really well. She was one of the leaders of that group. And she taught Kathleen and I everything that we know about running a Renaissance Fair. She actually taught Kathleen way more than she taught me. She spent a lot of time with Kat. But it was, Dawn had a history with Renaissance fairs and with events, reenactments, things like that. She helped put on the pleasure fairs in California when they were first new. She helped start a number of fairs up and down West Coast, and most of them are still running today. And so yeah, she actually, when Kat and I first got involved on the board here, Dawn was looking at buying Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. and merging it in with the Treasure Valley Renaissance Fair and kind of having a dual deal there. Dawn's no longer with us, but that we took over this, and she helped us to get it to where it is now, or helped us to understand how to get it to where it is now, at least. So, and
there you go.
Yeah.
So you threw out a couple of names. The Cedar City Renaissance Fair event, Shakespeare event, is that still going on?
That still does go on, yes.
Okay.
The Cedar City, Southern Utah University, has one of the very few one-to-one scale replicas of the Globe Theater as part of their university. Globe Theater, for those who don't know, was Shakespeare's theater. William Shakespeare's theater that he built and ran in London. That was the Globe Theater, and so Southern Utah University has a one-to-one scale replica of that their theater department uses, and they put on plays in it, and it's a whole thing. It's great. But their Shakespeare Festival goes on for pretty much most of the summer, and they have a few different. They've got some music festivals and the Renaissance Fair and things like that happen in the library park nearby. That are kind of in conjunction with that.
Gotcha. What about the Treasure Valley Renaissance Fair? Is that still going?
Treasure Valley Renaissance Fair is not still going. That was owned and operated by Dawn, and when certain health things started happening with her family, she had to stop running the Treasure Valley Renaissance Fair.
Okay.
That kind of had to get shut down, and like I said, she's passed on now.
So in your opinion, a Renaissance Fair is a sustainable idea? I mean, Cedar City's obviously is still going. It was going before you attended your first time. Do you see Idaho Renaissance Fair being able to be sustainable?
I absolutely see Idaho Renaissance Fair being sustainable. There's plenty of examples of sustainable Renaissance fairs and medieval reenactments that are around the nation. And a few even around the world that have been going for decades. You don't need to look any further than Texas Renaissance Fair to see one that has been going for a very long time and is very successful. The California pleasure fairs are very successful. They have been going for a long time. You've got a number of Renaissance fairs back east that have been going for a very, very long time. So it's something that can get done, and something that in my opinion should be had. There should be a Renaissance Fair in every community. That's my personal thought. But
sounds like a big dream.
But yes, it is our dream to get the Idaho Renaissance Fair and Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. to be a sustainable, ongoing company and event. So.
Have you taken any notes from these others? Like, is the Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. based off of the Texas Fair or the Pleasure Fair? Like, how much of Idaho Renaissance Fair is unique?
So there is. We've looked at the other fairs' handbooks and the way they do things, and we've taken some little bits and pieces here and there. But one of the things that we absolutely are wanting to keep with us is that we are our own thing. We've had people come to us and go, well, this Renaissance Fair does it this way, and that Renaissance Fair does it that way, or this event does this, and our response to that is always, okay, but we're not them. We are unique to Boise. We have a very Boise attitude. We are welcoming and kind, and not that other Renaissance fairs aren't, but it's just a different atmosphere here in Boise, and we want to keep that atmosphere when we're at our events.
Okay. So with the idea of a Ren Fair being sustainable, where do you see your future? How long are you personally planning on staying with Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. as it is right now? Like, where's your future?
So I actually am hoping to get this built up to a point where I don't have to work another job. Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. is my retirement plan. I want to retire into Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. and just for the rest of my life.
That sounds like a pretty long and lengthy goal.
Yeah.
When do you see this bearing fruit? When do you feel, based off of how things have been going, you will be able to become full-time?
There's a few things that have to happen there, so I don't have a specific timeline of when. Yes, I think I would like it to happen within the next 5 years. If all of our plans and everything go according to plan, then yeah, we should be able to have full-time employees running this within 5 to 10 years, 10 years at the latest.
Okay. Now, do you see the future of the event being just the one event? Like, what are the plans then to become sustainable? What are your goals to make it so that you can just be Idaho Renaissance Faire?
So we actually already have more than one event. We've got the Renaissance Fair that takes place in the fall. And then we have a springtime event. It's our Beltane Fantasy Festival. It takes place in the springtime, of course. I think I already said that. But the moving forward, the plans are just to keep adding. End goal as far as how many events, we want to have 4 established events throughout the year, each one being roughly a third of the year apart, right? So, or a fourth of the year apart, so 3 months apart. But the next one that we want to start when we're ready to do that is going to be a Viking themed event. The working name for that is Skol. That is going to be in January when it gets going. The other event, which is planned out for after I'm able to quit my normal day job and do this full time, is going to be a pirate event. That has to be in this. It's going to be in the summer, and that's why it has to be after I'm running this full time. So.
Okay. So this sounds like a lot of work. I mean, this isn't just a weekend warrior. If you were to guesstimate roughly how many hours average that you have to put in to be the operations vice president, what's your average work week?
My average work week, I would say anywhere between 35 to 55 hours a week.
On top of your regular
On top of my regular job. I get home from work and I'm usually looking at, emailing vendors or writing up, revising documents, organizing things, working on the website.
That sounds like a lot of effort. Why is this worth that? Why are you putting yourself through so much?
It's a really good question. I've asked myself that a number of times. But it really comes down to what the Renaissance Fair can be. One of my personal goals for Renaissance Fair, for Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc., for this area, is to build a community where our crafters and our reenactors and our entertainment groups, our local singers and local people primarily, but moving forward with a few others as well, right? Like I'm perfectly happy having our non-local entertainers and crafters and vendors come in as well, but having a space where people can exist and where people can be and people can do what they love without any fear of reprisal or judgment or anything like that. And the more successful we are, the more successful our vendors are, and vice versa. I want our vendors to be successful. I want our entertainers to come away with this from our events going, this is the best fair ever. We've had a couple of entertainers already talk to us and say, this is my home fair. We had one just this last event say, I don't want to do any other event but yours. And that's the community I'm wanting to build. Not that I don't want them doing other events, but I want to build a community where people look at us and they see a place where family is. They see a place where whether it's blood family or found family, it's family. They can come to our events as a vendor, as an entertainer, as a patron, and they can feel at home, they can feel safe, they can feel comfortable. They can be in an environment where they can be themselves, and that's not something that is found very often in today's society. There's so much arguing and anger and discontent and people backbiting and everything else, and we need a place that doesn't exist, and that's what Idaho Renaissance Faire Inc. is a place where that doesn't exist, a place where you can be yourself and not have people make fun of you, a place where you can find family and be with people who are going to care about you. So
sounds like a dream is what it sounds like. Do you think it's actually obtainable?
I absolutely think it's attainable.
Do you feel that you've obtained some of it already?
Yes.
Do you have any specific examples that you would mind sharing?
Well, like I said, we've had an entertainer who has told us that he doesn't want to do any other fairs at all. We're the only fair he wants us to do. We have had vendors who are from Washington and Florida who come in and they say, you guys are one of the best events, not necessarily money-wise, but one of the best events for family friendliness, for patron friendliness that we do, and they do the whole Ren Fair circuit. We've got some the actors that come from Texas and from Chicago. They look at us and they go, this is a completely different atmosphere, and it's a comfortable atmosphere. It's a good atmosphere. We have vendors who, we've got plans in the future for having our own site, and we've got vendors who are going, hey, when you have a site, would it be possible for me to put a brick and mortar on your site? And the vendors that are asking that, some of them are from here local, but some of them are telling us, yeah, we'll move from Montana to Boise so that we can have a brick and mortar on your site.
That's a huge compliment.
That's to me, that says that we are being successful with building the community we want to build. People want to be at our event.
So if you could offer a piece of advice to younger Josh from 2018 when everything was starting, or even 2017 when it couldn't start, what is the key piece of advice you would offer to that Josh?
To 2017 Josh, I would say don't give up. Don't despair. Don't worry about it, because it gets better. And it'll work.
It has worked.
It has worked. For me already, it has worked. We're seeing it work. So
if someone else down the road, let's go 20 years down the road, there's a person wants to start their own Renaissance fair, what is the biggest hint you can give them for success?
Do it out of love. Don't focus on the money aspect of it. The money's important. You can't put on a Renaissance fair without money. But do it out of love. You have to love what you're doing when you're putting on events like this, or else it's not gonna. You're not gonna suffer through the hard times. You're not gonna suffer through not having very many vendors, or you're not gonna want to put in the hours that it takes to go to the other events and look at other vendors and get their business cards and then go home and spend 5 hours emailing everybody whose business cards you got. You won't want to if you don't love it. You have to love it. Yeah.
You mentioned Dawn earlier in the interview. Do you believe that she would support your vision? I
absolutely believe she would support our vision. It's one that we talked about with her for quite some time. The idea for having a hard site in the Boise area was one that has existed within the Renaissance fairs that are here for a long time. Dawn was one of the ones who really helped put that in our minds to begin with, was to have the hard site and to build a community where people could be. She absolutely, this is originally. She's the one who gave me a lot of the advice she did when we were first starting. Don't give up. It gets better. You know, all the stuff I was saying, I would tell myself, it gets better. It'll work. And she kind of spearheaded the start of our vision back then. So I absolutely believe that she would be on board with this.
Well, I feel there's a lot of people on board with you. I mean, just based off of the success, can you give us an idea of how successful the Idaho Renaissance Fair has been for the 2023 year?
Yeah, so for the 2023 year, we put on 2 different events. It's our first year putting on 2 different events. The Beltane event was interesting success. I thought it was a great success. We had some weather issues, which made it interesting. But for that event, we had close to, if I remember my numbers correctly, I don't have them in front of me, but close to 80 vendors. Comparing that to our first event that we put on with only 36 back in CUNA. And then the Renaissance Fair itself that took place in fall, we had 130 vendors. And so it's a lot of growth, a lot of success. This year through our gates, we have seen 16,000 people through our gates, and that's with both events combined. But yeah, that's
a pretty substantial
amount of growth, and it's an ode to success for sure.
And it's only going to get better. You fully believe it's only going to get better.
Oh, absolutely. Beltane is already starting out strong, or looking to start out strong. I've got people knocking on the door to get their applications already so that they can sign up for Beltane. And Renaissance Fair next year, we're going to 2 weekends. So
there you go. Thank you, Josh, for taking some time and answering some of our questions. For everyone watching, do make sure if you have any extra questions you would like answered that you leave them in the comments so that we can do a follow-up interview and we can get those questions answered for you, especially as we're continuing on. Any final comments, any final bits of wisdom that you would like to share?
Not really.
Okay. Then this here is the Idaho Renaissance Fair, Inc. We hope that your history is as fun as ours, and we will see you on the next video. Huzzah!
Huzzah!